Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 26.4 Beta 1 released to developers and public beta testers a few days ago, and iOS 26.3 released to the public over a week ago. But there's even more to talk about since the iOS 26.4 Beta 1 is out what's new video. We'll talk about the latest Apple news, we'll also talk about many new features, and we'll talk about the overall experience. Not just my experience, but your experience based off the YouTube community poll on the post page, where at the time of this video there's over 14,000 votes and 161 comments. I've gone over all the comments to determine what the update is like for most of us, so be sure to stick around toward the end of the video where I'll read some of your comments as well. Now, the first week of March, we expect Apple to announce multiple products. New code found in macOS 26.3 by Macworld has shown 3 devices coming soon. The first is a long-expected low-cost MacBook. They're also low in stock at Walmart at this point, or they're out of stock with the regular M1 MacBook, making way for this low-cost MacBook. And also we're expecting 2 new studio displays. Based on the code, one would be a regular display and then a high-end display as well. So maybe Apple will get rid of Pro Display XDR and replace it with a regular studio display and a high-end studio display, but we'll have to wait and see as far as that goes. Now, it seems there's been a report of a modem failure in the new iPhone Air, which uses Apple's very own C1X modem. A user on Reddit actually reported that he woke up with no reception. The iPhone had been taken care of in a case, according to the user, and it just seemed to go away overnight. They tried to restart it, reset it, and even use dual SIMs, but none of them showed up at all. So of course Apple will take care of it, and this seems to be a one-off case out of millions and millions of devices, but still it would be concerning if you experience that. So hopefully it's just a one-off issue. Also, if you have an iPhone and maybe a Pixel, you may be aware that you can now AirDrop from any Apple device to Pixel 10 series devices. However, this week, Apple also added support for Pixel 9 series devices. They're going to roll this out across many more devices very soon, and hopefully this will just be an open standard soon. Now, there's many new features in iOS 26.4. There's been quite a few that have been found since the initial Beta 1 is out what's new video, so let's go over the latest features. The first thing has to do with messages and RCS encryption. I showed how you have that feature now. If you go into your settings, we'll go down to apps and then messages. And if we go into RCS, you'll see, depending on your phone and carrier, you may or may not have this option, but there is an end-to-end encryption beta. So this should be rolling out hopefully in the near future once it releases to the public, to everyone. However, there's some new features within messages that show you that it is encrypted. So if we go into messages, and if you scroll all the way to the top of a conversation, you'll see it now says iMessage encrypted. Now this is iPhone to iPhone using iMessage, but it's also showing up for some SMS messages. So this was a couple years ago, this particular message, and it now says not encrypted. So depending on your carrier and who you're texting with RCS messaging, whether it's Android or iPhone, it may or may not show it. But you can see here what it looks like if you're using RCS as well, and thanks to Gustavo for sending this in. Also, there's a change within Personal Hotspot. It now has a little bit different layout, but the big change has to do with data usage. If we go into this, you can now see usage from individual devices in a page view. So again, you'll see 1.06 gigabytes on my MacBook Pro, and that's what it was using. But again, you have more information here. If you want to see it, you can see it right within the settings now. There's another new option within our camera. If we go into camera and then we scroll down to where we have record sound, under record sound, you'll see audio zoom. It says recorded audio is focused on the subject when the camera is zoomed. Now, it did seem to do this before, but now we have an option to turn it off if we'd like. It was on by default for me. If we go into our settings and this time go into our name at the top, then go into iCloud, scroll to the bottom, you'll see iCloud.com. There's some new options here, which says allow data access, allow search, and then advanced. So it says allow your trusted Apple device to provide search results to iCloud.com. You can turn this off if you'd like, or go to advanced, and there's more information about export recent searches and then clear recent searches as well. If we go into reminders, there's a change here also. Within reminders, if we go back, you'll see that we have a new option or new area for urgent. Under urgent, it will list anything that you've marked as urgent within your reminders themselves. Now, I mentioned before how there is a change within the App Store and within your own personal settings, but there's additional changes here as well. At the bottom, the search bar is now one continuous bar instead of being separated between 4 different icons and then search. And then if we go to search, search is back at the top. So this is a slight change to the UI itself. And also there's one other thing worth mentioning. You can no longer sign out of the App Store and maybe sign in with a different account or region. So some people have messaged me saying they're unable to do that, but they've made the change to the account and the way it's laid out. Again, this is beta 1, so provide feedback if that's something you'd like to see brought back. Within shortcuts, there's an update. If we go into shortcuts, then we go to add a shortcut, and then maybe search for the action battery, you'll see there's a new option to set battery charge limit. So if we go into battery charge limit, we can now change it from 80% to 100%, and then we have variables that allow it to ask each time or just have shortcut input. So if you want to enable that using a shortcut, it's now available. Now, every time I show a new update, I talk about the build number with the beta updates, and one thing it's not showing is the build number. Apple has changed this in the About section of settings, where you need to tap it to show the build number. This is very similar to what you have on a Mac. Tap it and it goes away, tap it again and it comes back. So we have 23E5207Q, and again, it's hidden. I don't know that this is necessary, but it is a change that they've made. Also, something that we thought was in iOS 26.3 is actually in iOS 26.4. If we go into settings and then go down to notifications, notification forwarding is available in the European Union. So this is something that will allow notification forwarding from third-party devices, such as maybe a third-party watch, maybe AirPods or something like that, as well as the connectivity screen you see when you connect AirPods. So if we open this up, and then you have this little pop-up here, it will enable third-party devices to do that as well on iPhone. If we slide over and go into the Health app, there's a change here in the United States. Listed under Vitals, they've made this updated so that we now have blood oxygen here again. So this is back in the United States. Also, if you use sleep, so I don't use it too much, but if we go into sleep, there's now some new data here. We now have average bedtime. So depending on when you go to bed, you can see your average bedtime as well. Again, I don't typically use this that much, but you'll see here under sleep score, it says 4 sleep sessions needed. So if you are using this, you'll see average bedtime here. Within Apple Music, there's some updates. So one thing I mentioned in the What's New video is that there's concerts available. If you keep scrolling down, you'll actually see that where it says concerts, find concerts nearby. You have to set your location and then you can use it. So now that I've enabled it, it now shows concerts nearby. And if we go into concerts, you can see all of them that are playing near my location. It tells you where they're playing and when they're playing as well, such as Toby Mac at the Bojangles Coliseum on Sunday at 6:30 p.m., along with some other artists as well, along with Crowder and others. So lots of different people showing up here based on what I listen to and also what's nearby. Also within playlists, there's new dynamic playlist covers for Apple Music. Also, if you want to add a song to a playlist, this has been updated so you can add it to multiple playlists at once. So let's go ahead and add this song to a playlist. We'll add it to a playlist here. Tap this button, and now we can add it to maybe this playlist as well as maybe this one as well. And you can add it to those multiple playlists at once instead of having to do it individually. Also, if you want to share a song, you may see a new SharePlay interface with a larger QR code. Also within settings, if we go to accessibility and then this time scroll down to where we have live captions, under live captions, there's a new language here. If we scroll down, you'll see there's Chinese with Taiwan in parentheses. So that's something they've just added. Within Safari on the iPad, there's a change here. So if we go into Safari, you'll see that I have a few different tabs open, Apple, Google, and Basic Apple Guy. And if we go over to our settings, you'll see we have a new option for compact tab bar. If we go into this, scroll back, you'll see that it makes them compact, just like macOS 26.4 Tahoe. So there's a change there that's really nice. If you just want it more compact, you can enable it. If not, change it back. Also, if you have tvOS 26.4, Apple removed the iTunes Movie and TV Shows app in this beta, so it looks like they've finally gotten rid of those. And also, there's a battery charge limit now in macOS 26.4. It makes it more consistent with what we have on the iPad, as well as charging on the iPhone. So under charging, where we have our charge limit, you have the same exact slider on the Mac now. So that's available there if you're running macOS 26.4. When it comes to iOS 27, it seems like it's going to be the stability update we've wanted for years. This week, Mark Gurman has said that Apple is cleaning up the code, refining liquid glass, and in turn focusing on battery as well after all that's cleaned up. We do expect some features with Apple Intelligence. Apple could delay their chat sort of Siri upgrade to that update, and also we could have updates to health and a few other things. But I'm looking forward to it, and we should see that update for the first time in June of 2026 at WDC, usually around June 8th. We'll see the beta 1 version, and then of course betas throughout the summer and a public release in September. And speaking of releases, Apple stopped signing iOS 26.2.1 this week and iOS 18.7.4. That means you can no longer downgrade to those versions, and unfortunately you only have 26.2 and 18.7.5. Also, that usually means within a few weeks we'll get an update, so maybe we'll have an iOS 26.3.1 to fix some additional issues, but that could be a week or two out. Also, Apple released Xcode 26.3 RC2 the other day, and iOS 26.4 Beta 2 could come within a week or so. So based on what we've seen in the past, typically they skip a week after the first beta, so I wouldn't expect anything this coming week, but we could see something as soon as maybe March 2nd. So that would make sense, release the beta around that time with the new device updates, things like that. And again, maybe we'll see a 26.3.1 around that time as well. Some recent information is said to expect iOS 26.4 to release to the public toward the end of March, or possibly early April, but based on what we've seen in the past, I would think the end of March. So once we get to Beta 3, maybe we'll have Beta 2, Beta 3, then an RC and a public release toward the end of March. When it comes to AirPods Pro 3, I've been using them almost every single day since they released, and they've been pretty good overall. However, with the latest updates, it seems to have fixed many of the issues I was having. So with iOS 26.3 and macOS 26.3, it seems much better. However, there's one exception. Just today, I was in a different location with many different devices around me, and they did start to sort of degrade in audio quality and disconnect. But I do have 26.4, which that's an issue on, we'll talk about in a moment. But on the Mac, they were sort of degrading in quality, and I'm not running the beta on the version I'm using right now. So it seems like it's an issue, but most people are not reporting it, and it usually goes away. But once I turn on a lot of devices, if I use AirDrop, for example, it sort of garbles up like it's interfering. So it seems to be an issue still. When it comes to iOS 18.7.5, there's been pretty much no complaints so far. Many people are happy they're on iOS 18, and we're really not hearing any issues with it. However, with iOS 26.3, there's a few things worth mentioning. I've been running both full-time, so I switched over to the beta, but I've also run the public version as well, and CarPlay is fixed for most people. The only complaints I'm seeing right now is similar to the one I experienced, where it connects to your car, you use it for a few seconds, it disconnects, reconnects, and then it's no longer an issue. Why it does that, I'm not sure. I still see that on 26.4 as well. Many people are still reporting issues with the UI and animation stutter, but that's mostly on iPhone 12 to 15 series. So depending on the device you have, that can affect that, it seems. Maybe the processor's just not fast enough to run liquid glass. Either way, it's still an issue. Also, keyboard has improved for many people. The lag is gone for most people, but it still remains for some. Within Notes, for example, you'll see this is iOS 26.3 on iPhone 17 Pro Max, 17 Pro Max, and it's doing just fine on this device. However, some people have said give it a few days and it slows down. A restart seems to fix it for many, but it's still an issue on older phones for sure. Some also say that colors are off in the camera on older devices. So if you're taking a photo, a couple people mentioned that with the iPhone 12 and 13, bright reds are now showing to be a little bit more pink in color, and the camera app is crashing on some older devices as well. I haven't experienced that on the 17 Pro Max, but a few people have mentioned that issue. When it comes to iOS 26.4 Beta 1, I've been using it full-time on the 17 Pro Max in silver, and it has modem improvements. Many people are reporting better connectivity. Personal Hotspot is working for those who had issue with iOS 26.3, and the app library lag is fixed for many. So for example, if I switch this maybe over to clear icons, we'll customize it here to clear, brighten the background there, swipe over, go to app library. Scrolling is nice and smooth here. Going into different app folders seems to be nice and smooth, where this was very buggy and laggy before. So it seems like they've resolved that issue. If we switch back here, we'll go to customize, switch back over, and many people are saying the one issue they're seeing, especially on some of the newer and a few older devices, is slow charging. You plug it into charge and it says slow charging on the device. This seems to be a consistent issue for many people. I'm charging it wirelessly and not seeing that, but many people are reporting this, so it definitely seems to be a bug. Make sure you report that in feedback as well. The AirPods Disconnect Bug is there, so not the issues I mentioned before, but rather your phone is using AirPods, they disconnect randomly, reconnect, disconnect. Many people are reporting this. Also, the lock screen is very laggy for some, especially when trying to edit the lock screen. So if we go into it, so maybe we're trying to customize the wallpaper today, you'll see it's okay. It's really smooth for me, but again, some people are experiencing some dramatic lag. I've seen this before. Let's go over here and maybe add one. So as I scroll down, you'll see it's very stuttery. As I just scroll back and forth, they haven't resolved this issue. I'm not sure why. And some people are saying they can't download the collections they want for their wallpaper either. Also, widgets are stuttering for some, depending on what they're seeing. Sometimes the widgets are very slow. Mercury weather here, for example, seems to be okay, but sometimes it's just a little bit stuttery for people. So for the most part, it seems to be pretty good, but there's still issues here and there. As far as performance goes, well, performance seems to be pretty good on newer devices that seem to maybe slow down after a few days. Maybe that's poor RAM management or just using adaptive power. I've noticed with adaptive power on, there's definitely stutter the first time you swipe. So I don't know if that's because it's ramping up the processor, but overall it seems fast. ProMotion seems smooth. But again, those first swipes or initial swipes seem to be stuttery. Once I turn off adaptive power, though, that clears up. So I definitely think it's related to that somehow. When it comes to overall heat and thermals, well, depending on who's using it and what device, many are reporting that iOS 26.4 is quite hot still. It could be processing in the background. This is in turn hurting battery life, but we'll take a look at that in a moment. But iOS 26.3 generally seems to have fixed issues with heat, so it seems like there's still some issues going on here. Both of my devices are nice and cool, but let's go ahead and run benchmarks and take a look at the thermals. So we'll run them both at the same time, and we have 26.3 on the left, 26.4 beta 1 on the right. So on iOS 26.4 beta 1 on the 17 Pro Max, at the hottest point, I think I saw 35.9, and then on the 17 Pro Max running iOS 26.3, again, right about the same, 35.9. So basically the same. That's what you should see, as the processor should be using full ability and then heating up and then dissipating that heat with the new vapor chamber. Benchmarks completed, and on the left we have iOS 26.3 with 3,796 for single core, 9,688 for multi-core. iOS 26.4 beta 1 on the right has 3,765 for single core, 9,631 for multi-core. So very similar. Basically what you would expect, well within the margin of error. Sometimes you'll see over 10,000 if you run this a few times in a row. When it comes to battery life, well, it depends on how you're using it. I've been using it full time on my 17 Pro Max. So if we go ahead and take a look here, we'll go to battery health. I'm at 100% capacity with 22 cycles on this phone. And if we scroll down, you can see my battery usage. If we go back to iOS 26.3, I had 2 hours and 35 minutes of screen active time, 2 hours and 47 minutes of screen idle time, and used 61% of the battery. The greatest usage was on Monday, giving me just 4 hours and 44 minutes. However, once the beta's been out, well, now I've had 3 hours and 1 minute of screen active time, 2 hours and 1 minute of screen idle time with 68% usage. So it just varies day to day. Now it's doing much better today at 36% used with just 2 hours and 24 minutes of screen active time. So based off of this, we should be getting much better battery life, as it seems it's finished processing in the background here. Now, based on what you've had to say, iOS 26.3, 53% of you so far say that battery is better than previous versions. So depending on who you are and what device you're using, those who say battery is worse are typically on iPhone 13, 14, and 15 models. With iOS 26.4 beta 1, there are very few people using it based off of the comments. However, those who have said they're using it, 28% say it has improved battery. So far, I think it's still processing in the background. As you saw, it seemed to only get better today, and it's been quite a few days since it released. So most report the phone is running hot, making me think that it's still processing in the background. So give it a few more days, see if it improves, but it is an early beta. If you're wondering if you should install iOS 26.4 beta 1, at this point, if you're on iOS 26.3, I probably would wait for the next few versions. iOS 26.3 is the stable update, and this one is okay, but still has some issues here and there. So I would wait maybe once we're closer to the final release, and of course, make sure you have a backup if you do upgrade as well. When it comes to the overall experience and what you had to say, let's take a look at some of your comments. Supernova86 says, I've read from others that sometimes apps just freeze. After 26.3, it does it for sure and very often. iPhone 16 Pro Max. Can't wait for a good update at some point to fix everything and use my iPhone correct like before. Also, it continues to have frame drops, especially when I unlock it. RYDGMC said, I've been using iOS 26.3 on my iPhone 16e. Despite a few slight random bugs, this is the most stable iOS 26 version yet, and the battery is nearly on par to what I was given getting on iOS 18.7.3 before I updated. There's still some room for improvement, but so far I think they've made great progress. Shurig Kuranak, hopefully I'm saying that properly, surprisingly iOS 26.3 is much better on my iPhone 16 Pro Max. Jitters have significantly reduced, and the UI is now quite smooth. Apple just needs to focus on improving battery life and refining the UI further. The Revenant 765 says 26.4 Beta 1 on iPhone 16. Still have bugs and issues, mainly in app opening and closing, sometimes showing a black screen. In Settings Profile, iCloud Backup, apps were automatically turned on. If I turned off manually, automatically turning back on. Billy Music 1 says, iPhone 15 running iOS 26.4 Beta 1 for a few days now. It runs very smoothly even on this 2-year-old iPhone. I had installed the beta firmware too for AirPods Pro 2 and the connection seems to have upgraded. It's more instant, but I did have a moment when the connection screenplay popped up to the top half of my screen rather than the bottom, but we're smoothly sailing otherwise. Jaden's Tech said 26.4 Beta 1 on my 17 Pro Max and the AirPods disconnecting bug is horrible. Even after resetting my AirPods and force rebooting my phone, it's still there. The only major bug though, other than that, it's pretty smooth. When it comes to storage, let's go ahead and take a look. We'll look at 26.3 compared to 26.4, and we'll go into General and then iPhone storage. Give it a moment to load. We'll scroll to the bottom, and you'll see the overall size is 22 gigabytes on iOS 26.4 Beta 1 compared to 23.03 on iOS 26.3. On this device in particular, Apple Intelligence seems to be taking up a couple more gigabytes than it does on other devices, but either way, it's right where you would expect it. When it comes to system data, it's going to go up and down as needed. Some have said this has gone way up, using up a lot of their storage, and if that's the case, that's definitely an issue, but it could go up to 50 gigabytes if you have it available and go back down, even 100 gigabytes depending on your overall storage. Once it's done processing, it can then drop a little bit, but I have a separate video if you're concerned about that on how to lower it. When it comes to iOS 18.7.5, it's still a bit of a shame that you can't upgrade even if you're on a device that still has iOS 18.7.2, for example. This is something I would love to see Apple allow for those that still want to stay on that version, are comfortable with it, and just want the security updates. Maybe sometime in the future, but at this point you'll have to upgrade to iOS 26 for those particular security upgrades. When it comes to iOS 26.3, well, it's a move in the right direction. I still give it a B+ since it seems to be a decent update, especially if you've been using iOS 26 from the start. It brought stability and smoothness we haven't experienced consistently throughout, but it seems like it's a much better update overall. The latest updates actually seem to show that Apple is working to improve usability and reliability, and hopefully that carries to iOS 27. With iOS 26.4, it's lacking Siri, but seems to be giving a bit more. I'd give it a C at this point, where iOS 26.4 added many more features than initially expected, minus the Siri upgrade, but it continues to refine the iOS 26 experience. It's definitely an early beta and shows it by some of the odd user experiences, but it's showing Apple's shift in focus toward reliability first. So hopefully, as they continue to change things, we've seen internal changes, and hopefully that carries across to the iPhone itself. So that's everything with iOS 26.3 and iOS 26.4 Beta 1. Hopefully we get a new beta in another week or so, and we get some exciting products finally with some major upgrades. Let me know what you're looking most forward to in the comments below, and of course I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.